Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Today we are going to talk about other types of translation, like faithful translation, um, communicative translation, adaptation, and the free translation. Faithful translation, actually, typically, is a kind of or a method of translation where it maintains a balance between the literal meaning of the source language word and the target language syntactic structures. Also, it sounds more reasonable as it takes into the context into consideration, which is different from the previous types or methods of translation because it aims at producing more precise meaning. So, of the source language. So here, actually, typically when we talk about faithful translation, it is, as we said, it is a kind of a process that conveys or of conveying the meaning. It conveys the tone. It conveys the intent of the source text precisely. Let's say precisely, accurately, let's say, in the target language, while, let's say, preserving the original message as closely as possible. So, this type of translation, which is faithful translation, gives a priority uh, to accuracy, equivalence over creativity, let's say, or cultural adaptation. So the key, let's say, the main features or the main characteristics of faithful translation, as we said, it maintains the balance. It sounds more reasonable, right? More reasonable at in terms of the context. It maintains the original meaning without addition or omission. It stays, as we said, close to the source text structure and vocabulary when possible. It also respects, as we said, tone, register, stylistic features of the original context or text. And also we can say that it doesn't like excessive interpretation or localization. Let's go to the examples here. You see things and you say, why? But I dream things that never were. And I say, why not? So maybe the translation would be أنت ترى الأشياء وتقول لماذا ولكني أحلم بأشياء لم توجد أبدا وأقول لم لا وأقول لم لا. So here we notice that this type of translation is maintained, the meaning, the content, the tone, the intent, accuracy is prioritized. Uh, Accuracy is prioritized, as we said, and no excessive interpretation or localization is maintained. So here, so we also this example can give ample evidence to for such a kind of interpretation like this. For example, other examples, let's say, other examples are present. So, for example, when we say the minister, right? When we say, for example, the minister, for example, gave a detailed report, مثلا, for example. So here, so this is example, right? So here the minister gave detailed report. So the let's say the let's say the faithful translation would be for example قدم الوزير تقريرا, right, مفصلا, right. So قدم الوزير تقريرا مفصلا. So here we can say that the meaning is maintained, the let's say the all the features are maintained. For example, so we can see that this type of translation is faithful as it preserves the structure أولا with the exact meaning without any let's say we change without any embellishment or something like this. For example, we say another example. We say another example. For example, we have he kicked the he kicked the bucket, for example. So the meaning here is he passed away, right? Or he died, right? Or he died. Uh, so it wouldn't be the meaning, literal meaning. If we apply the literal meaning strategy or method, it would be هو ركل الدلو, right? هو ركل الدلو, right? Which is, of course, this meaning. This translation is weird and it doesn't work at all. So here, so the meaning would be, right? مات, right? هو إيش؟ هو مات, right? انتقل إلى رحمة الله تعالى. Now uh, so here we have kind of انتقل رحمة الله تعالى. If we talk in the context, all these things into account, right? So now we move to a communicative translation. We move to a communicative translation. So what would a communicative translation uh, mean, right? Okay, so here when we talk about communicative translation, which is another type of translation, right? This type of translation attempts to render this communicative contextual, exact contextual meaning. So this type of translation is more, let's say, is more practical as it renders the exact meaning, a contextual meaning of the original text in such a way that both content and language are readily accessible and comprehensible to the reader. Also, it is particularly suitable when translating conventional formulae or proverbs. So when it comes to proverbs, it involves some levels of cultural approximation, similar to the example here for he kicked the bucket, where we translate it or translated it as انتقل إلى رحمة الله تعالى أو فلان أعطاك عمره. طبعا الله سبحانه وتعالى اللي يعطي الأعمار يعطي الأعمار, but this is a kind of traditional. لا نقول فلان أبوك مات. Simply speaking, we say انتقل رحمة الله تعالى وهكذا. يعني we have different constructions used to convey such structure like this. So it aspires to create the same effect created by the source language text on the target language reader. It also communicates the meaning at the expense of accuracy. So this is actually the spirit of such translation, as it communicates the meaning at the expense of accuracy. It is also preferred by many translators. طبعا it is preferred by translators because it resorts to concepts that are more familiar to the target language reader on cultural and social levels. And finally, it is usually used for culturally specific idioms, proverbs, cliches, where the translator replaces a source language word or concept with one that already exists in the source language. Sorry, in the target language. So here we can say also that it concentrates on the message and the main force of the text. It tends to be simple, clear, and brief, and is always written in natural and resourceful style. For some linguists, a communicative translation is produced when, in a given situation, the source language uses the source translator, I mean, uses the source language expression standard for the situation. And the target translator uses a target language expression standard for an equivalent target culture situation, as in Dickens 2005. So here we have charity begins at home. So if we use the literal or word for word translation, maybe الحسنة تبدأ بالبيت, let's say. And this is actually meaningless and it doesn't convey the exact meaning clearly, but we say الأقربون أولى بالمعروف. So if you want to have charity, definitely, it is the relatives and the close people who have the priority to receive such charity like this. Diamonds cut diamonds. الماس يقطع الماس. Okay. الماس يقطع الماس. So if we keep saying الماس يقطع الماس, maybe we would end up aimlessly, right? Because الماس يقطع الماس, it has no function, no meaning, no intent, no content, and so on and so forth. But when you say لا يفل الحديد إلا الحديد, so لا يفل الحديد إلا الحديد, so it can convey different messages that let's say equal people, let's say, are close to each other. So, in general, as a kind of conclusion, we say that it focuses on communicative translation focuses on delivering the message of the original text in natural, clear, culturally appropriate way in the target language, even if that means adjusting the structure or idioms or expressions. So the goal, as we said, for the target audience to understand the message as easily and effectively as possible. So sometimes it is contrasted with faithful or semantic translation, which focuses more on staying close to the source text. So it focuses on the effect, natural, as we said. Uh, it has the authority to change sentence structure, word choice, أحيانا idioms for clarity, like what we have here. Charity begins at home. طبعا it gives a priority to the reader than any other levels. Okay. So for example, when you say, for example, can you give me a hand مثلا, right? Can you give me a hand? That's an example. Can you give me a hand, right? So can you give me a hand here, right? So another example here, can you give me a hand here? So when you say, can you give me a hand? Typically, can so if we use the literal, for example, our faithful translation, can you give a hand? هل لك أن تعطي يدا؟ هل أن تعطي يدا? And this is weird, right? This is weird. So هل لك أن تساعدني؟ هل لك أن تساعدني؟ هل يمكنك مساعدتي؟ هل يمكنك مساعدتي? Right? So this would respect tone, this would respect content, this would respect cultural adaptation, and so on and so forth. So in general, we can say that it makes sense to the target audience, simply speaking. So such a kind of translation is proper to be satisfactory for the audience, to be satisfactory for the listener, right? كمان we can say that it is maybe it is often used. Let's say it is often used in the following domains مثلا, like for example marketing, one, in marketing, two, for example in advertising, right? Three, it can also be used in uh, film or movie dialogues مثلا, right? Movie dialogues uh, and literature in general, because in literature actually the cultural uh, variations are available, right? Um, كمان we can use it in the landscapes in general, and as a kind of let's say public, right? In public signs مثلا, in pub, pub public signs and instructions in general يعني, so right, and instructions in general, right? Maybe it is used in speeches مثلا, right? In speeches and informal مثلا, right? And informal settings or informal texts or in يعني something like this. So here, so we can say that these different contexts require a huge amount of communicative vehicles. Okay, now now we move to adaptation. So in adaptation, dear students, we have actually adaptation. Okay, this strategy is considered as the freest, right, form of translation. As the freest, when we say freest form of translation, it is not usually differentiated from the, let's say, following types of translation. So it is adaptation. It is mainly for plays, comedies, uh, what else? Poetry, for example, right? What else? So the themes, characters, the plots are usually preserved. So here we can say that the source language culture is converted to the target culture and the text is rewritten. So here we talk about uh, we talk about let's say we talk about typically a huge amount of authority given to let's say to the translator, because uh, he or she is able to manipulate and make all changes in the text itself. So here, as we said, adaptation, it is used mainly for plays because they are bound to the cultures, right? So, for example, here the note taker, and how are all your people down at Chelsea? The bystander, suspiciously, who told you my people come from Chelsea? وكيف أهلك في سلسي؟ لاحظوا كيف، وكيف أهلك في سلسي؟ وشو عرفك إني من سلسي؟ Right? So here there is a kind of total adaptation from standard English used by the note taker and the bystander, right? And here it is changed or it is manipulated, it is translated into spoken. وشو عرفك اني من سلسي, right? وكيف اهلك في سلسي؟ وشو عرفك اني في سلسي? So here we notice, dear students, that this type of translation, where the, let's say, the original text is significantly altered to suit the cultural, social, linguistic norms of the target audience. So here we can say that it goes beyond a literal or even a communicative translation to, let's say, to recreate the message in a way that feels entirely natural and appropriate for the target culture. أحيانا they call it cultural substitution, right? They call it here, let's say that they call it here cultural substitution, right? They call it cultural substitution because يعني, it replaces concepts, idioms, references that may not exist or be understood in the target language. ولهذا it is typically let's say typically it involves creative writing because as I said that the writer or the translator has the full authority over the text itself because he has the ability to adjust cultural references, customs, humor, lexical context. So this is why we said it is generally used in movies مثلا. So here so it is used in the following setting, right? One, it is used in literature مثلا. In literature, it is used in advertisements because typically we have the full authority over the situation, films or movies, more film, let's say film dubbing مثلا, right? To be more specific يعني ممكن يكون في children's book because children's books because the children are unable to grasp the standard language easily from one language into the other. So for example مثلا like example سريع before we move to the next one لما نقول مثلا for example he is as fast as a cheetah. He is as fast as cheetah. So if we want to translate it لا نقول إنه سريع كالcheetah but we say مثلا إنه سريع right كالبرق right إنه سريع كإيش كالبرق الخاطف for example or كالبرق right. So here because so here الcheetah is replaced with شو اسمه البرق اللي هو lightning because في Arabic culture الcheetah is not, we are not familiar with cheetah and the barq is more familiar. So here it is important to make sure that such translation is maintained like this. Okay. Okay. Now we move to free translation, right? We move to free translation where we have the strategy preserves the meaning of the original but uses natural forms of target language, including normal word order, syntax, so that translation can be naturally understood and it preserves the content at the expense of the form. It provides a longer paraphrase for the original. It is a form of idiomatic translation that favors colloquialisms and idioms which do not exist in the source language. So here, actually, when we talk about the total free capacity to manipulate and play with the text so that it is natural, 100% natural. So here, for example, we have Cinderella had a wonderful time at the ball until she heard the first stroke of midnight. استمتعت سندريلا بوقتها في الحفل إلى أن دق جرس الساعة معلنا منتصف الليل. So here we have معلنا منتصف الليل, here midnight, right? She remembered what the fairy had said. تذكرت حينها تحذير الجنية, الفairy, right? So here the fairy is close to the culture of the target language, and without a word of goodbye, she slipped from the prince's arms and ran down the steps. ومن دون أن تنطق بكلمة وداع, right? أفلتت من ذراعي الأمير وركضت بسرعة إلى الدرج. As she ran, she lost one of her slippers. وركضت بسرعة على الدرج, وأثناء ركضها سقطت منها فردة حذائها, right? But not for the moment did the dream of stopping to pick it up. ولكنها لم تفكر للحظة في التوقف لالتقاطها. If the last stroke of midnight were so sad to sound, فقد كانت تخشى أن تقرع الدقة الأخيرة للساعة. Oh, what a disaster that would be. يا لها من كارثة لو حدث ذلك. Right? Out she fled and vanished into the night. فهربت واختفت في ظلام الليل أو في ظلمات الليل. Here we notice, dear students, that such type of translation gives a priority to, let's say, to free and unlimited authority by the translator to use the templates, the sentence patterns, the proverbs, the idioms in this target language to help the audience enjoy this type of translation. Thank you for listening and see you next time.